So these are the objectives today. We're going to talk about major structure and functions of the brain. Some of you will know much of this, but we'll just go over it. We will talk about two specific domains of cognitive function which are particularly important in aging and also in developmental disorders. Then we'll talk about two types of what we're calling unsuccessful aging and two types of successful aging. We will all fall into one of those four categories, okay? Then we will move into the afternoon talking about nutrition and what really is the role in nutrition in this whole notion about continuing to age gracefully, age with our cognition intact. As you know, the lifespan of the United States is getting longer. Therefore, there are more disease-related events that are occurring. By the time one is 85, 40% of the population of the United States will have Alzheimer's disease. Okay? This is a huge number. So, as we get older, we are at risk for more diseases. Then we'll finish up the day, hopefully around 3:30 to 4, about what is on the horizon, what breakthroughs have occurred or are about to occur that will actually change the way in which we age. Will it be possible for us to age with our cognition completely intact until the day we essentially pass away? Okay? These are brand new cutting-edge findings. Unfortunately, this is the shortest part of the program because there is not that much out there. But there are some things that I think you will find interesting. Now, at Boston University School of Medicine, there is a study called the Centenarian Study, where we were studying people over 100 years of age. About 10 years ago, you could count the number of people over 100 in the thousands. Now they're in the 10,000s. In fact, a letter went out to the participants of the Centenarian Study. We had to be 100. Something to the effect, I didn't see the letter, but if you're 103, you are no longer eligible to participate in the study because you are too young. Right? That's the number of people. 1 out of 3 people born today, Monday, will live to be over 100. Okay? That's going to be a very interesting world, I assure you. Now there are people we have followed, the world has followed, who are called super centenarians. They have lived to be 110 or older. There are fewer than 400 people like that in the world. Most of them, over 70% of them, are women. Okay? Here are the latest group. This is Jeanne Calment. She is the documented oldest living person in the world. She lived to be 122 years of age in France. She met Vincent van Gogh when she was 12 years old. At the age of 70, she got bored and decided to take up fencing. Very smart lady. She made a deal with her landlord. And she said, if I live to be over 90, will you let me live rent-free? Not only did she outlive her landlord, she outlived her landlord's son. Right? Amazing. Very, very smart lady. And she was cognitively intact to nearly the end of her life. The oldest living recorded male now is Hirman Kimura, who is now 116 years, who lived to be 116 years of age. He died a few years ago. So he's well behind the oldest woman in the world. The two current oldest people in the world, this has just changed. I just changed this last month because the previous two people had passed away. The oldest living woman now is Misao Okawa, she's 116, and Arturo Locata, who is 112, okay? Now you may ask, what's their secret? Oh, they must be on the Mediterranean diet, they must be, you know what? Nothing works. We don't know. There's certainly something about them that enabled them to live this long. Maybe it's genes, I don't know what, but we're trying to figure out why. One shout out to this person, Frank Buckles, died a few years ago. I don't know if you know the name. He died at 109. He was the last survivor of World War I. That era is now officially over. He was the last survivor. He joined the Army in World War I. He rejoined the Army in World War II. Interestingly, completely cognitive intact to the end, was lobbying Congress for years to build a monument to World War I veterans in Washington, for which there were monuments for World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War, but not for World War I veterans. Given our Congress, you think that, well, it didn't happen, okay? So he died never accomplishing that simple request that we build a monument for them. But that era, and the last spokesman is essentially gone. Okay, so what's with these people? How does that happen? I should mention there are some unique individuals like this that we deal with all the time. Going back to memory, someone mentioned to me during the break that they have a relative who has this remarkable capacity to remember every day of his life with a date, time, and essentially what happened during the day. That is true. There are now approximately 30 people being studied right now at the University of California, Irvine, who in their mid-50s or so remember virtually every day of their lives since they were teenagers. And I mean every day of their lives in detail, okay? This is Mary Lou Henna from Taxi is one of these individuals, right? Two interesting things we know about them, just before I forget this. One, this gets challenging, believe me. One of them is that these people have this remarkable, now they score normally on memory tests. So new memories, they're normal. But they have this, August 17th, 2001. Oh, I went to work that day, I had a headache. I remember going home early because, amazing, right? You know all the structures we talked about for memory. If you had to pick a structure that was important for memory, which one would you point to? Which one have I been talking about most? The hippocampus, right? So everyone, and neuroscientists said, oh my God, they must have a hippocampus the size of Cleveland. On MRI, it turns out that's not true. What has been shown so far is that their basal ganglia, the area that subserves habit and procedural memory, are 4 standard deviation units bigger than in normals, which is really strange, because what does that mean? That all of these experiences may be treated like a habit, like an instant habit. We don't know why. The other feature that they share in common, very interesting, they all have what looks like mild OCD. They all are very attentive to detail, obsessively so, not clinically, but there's definitely a character trait there. Fascinating. We don't know why. So there are these characters out there who live to be in their 110s, 120s, people who have these super memories, and neuroscience is desperately trying to study them and figure out what is going on so we can benefit from what we learn. Okay, so what do we know about aging in general now? So now I'm going to let you know one of the major findings in the last decade that has changed the way we view normal aging, okay? In 1955, there was a neuroanatomist, one of these OCD diagnosed guys who looked at under the microscope, and he counted neurons in brains of old people. That's all he did. His name was Brody. I mean, he did other stuff, but that probably took a lot of his time. And he came to the conclusion, after studying many brains, ages over 65 or so, that as we get older, we are losing neurons, right? They atrophy, they go away. You wake up in the morning and you hit your head on the kitchen counter, you've lost a couple of neurons. You had too much to drink Saturday night, yeah, you lost a couple of neurons, right? And over time, decade after decade, you've lost enough cortical neurons and now you're showing some cognitive changes, okay? That has been the gospel for over 60 years. For those of you who have ever seen an MRI report of a normal individual, a normal report, it will say the following, in someone over 65 generally: cortical atrophy consistent with normal aging. Cortical atrophy, loss of cortical neurons, consistent with normal aging. We now know this is absolutely not true. We do not lose neurons as we get older. We lose another component of our brains, but not the neurons. That is terrific news because it is unclear if we can make new neurons.